Good morning, Rabbi Isai. Rabbi Isai, we're holding 8 lines from the bottom of Kufzayin Amud Beis. Tanan awesome. We spoke about these shofaros. These are the different pushka boxes. There's a beautiful picture here that Yoshi put together. This is the inside, the cutaway view of this box, so you can't put your finger in there and try to steal money. And even has like the old style shekel kind of stuff. Okay. There are 6 out of the 13. 6. Keneged me, Shisha l'nadava keneged me. So we have 6 shitos. We'll see one after another. Easy shitos. Easier Gemara today. Siman, Kenaz Pasha. If you have a different siman in there, you might want to change it to Kenaz Pasha. Omar Chizkiya, these are the Amoraim who give us a reason. Omar Chizkiya, Keneged Shisha Batei Avos, Hakoyhanim, Shetiknu Lahem Chachamim, Sheyashalayim Zemzeh, should make peace. You should sit and talk for hours and make peace. Rabbi Isai, these are the Kohanim, right? The Kohanim are divided into 24 mishmaros, 24 groups. Each one of those 24 groups gets to serve in the Beis Hamikdash. These are the names. If you look closely, you'll see Malkiah, Charim, Aviyah. Okay, 24 groups. Each group gets a week. After 24 weeks, it starts all over again. If you take 1 week, they divide that mishmar of that week into 6 days. So each 24 is divided into 6. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. On Shabbos, they all get together. What might happen is, one day, on let's say Monday, there's a ton of animals. People are bringing in animals. Everybody's coming. The kohanim, they get the hide. They get the leather. There's a rainy day, and only one guy brings the carbon that day. So what happens? So he's going to open up the pushka, and he's going to use more money out of the pushka, out of the shofar, for Ketz HaMizbeach. People didn't show up. You can't have a lull on the... Bekitzer, so what happens is, comes a jealousy between the different days. You used up all the money out of the pushka. You have all the special leather stuff. Why? It's yeah. Yeah, it becomes chulin. Even the case is leather. I can't say that, but yes. Only 2 out of the 3 letters. He has 1 lousy piece. The kids are okay. So that's the problem. So what they did is every day gets their own amount of money. You can't complain. The ikir is this should be shalom. Let's prevent a machlokes, that there shouldn't be lechatchila any issues. There's so much money coming in, so we need a lot of pushkas. Why? And you know, in those days, the money would go bad. If it was just laid around, it would become a little rusty and moldy. Now, what? You could see in the picture. Okay. Here, you see the green stuff. Now, if you keep on pulling out from one area of the pushka, so the bottom part is just going to stay. Keep on piling it in like the milk, like we discussed already, the milk in a supermarket. If you keep on just taking from the front and not from the back, then you're going to have an issue. So what you do is you make 6 different pushkas, and they use one, then they use the other, I'm assuming, and they keep on going from one to one. So you're always There's a constant rotation of the money. What? You rotate. You don't let it sit there. Uziria ma third pshat keneged par ve'egel. You need 6. Why? Because in fact there are 6. In this picture you have 7. So just ignore one of the sheep over there. But there's 6 types of korbanos. Par, an adult cow, ve'egel, and the calf. Ayel, the adult, ve'keves, and the sheep, the younger one. Gdi, a mature goat, v'sar, and the baby. So there's 6. So you need. Now, v'rebihi, but this only goes according to das yachid, which the Gemara says we don't like that so much. It goes according to Rebbe that we had yesterday. Dama katan ve'evi gadol leyatza. You need 6 type of pushkas because if somebody donates a small sheep, he cannot bring an ayil, even though an ayil is more valuable. So I need a special pushka for ayil, a special pushka for tle, a special pushka for egel, a special. What do Chachamim hold? So that would be a machlokes rishonim. Rashi says Chachamim would hold all you need is 3 out of the 6. You need 1 adult for each one. You need the par, the ayil, and the aiz, whatever the adult goat. Why? Because Rabbanan hold once you give the more expensive one, you yaitz even this one. Taisa says no. All you need is 1 pushka. I could give a giant cow instead of a small sheep, as the Gemara says later. But that's machlokes Rashi and Taisus. Okay. Ubar pada Omar keneged haparim va'elim. You need for the extras. The parim would refer to the parim davar when Bezin makes a mistake and they tell Klal Yisrael that they could do certain things, such as eating a type of chaylev when they're not allowed, and then they find out they made a mistake. So all of Klal Yisrael gets together, they buy 1 par. And the leftover of that money, if it got lost, va'elim, and these are the goats for a sham ilos, a sham gzeilos. A sham ilos would be if somebody uses something in Beis Hamikdash, you would have to pay another chaimish, plus he has to bring a carbon. So you have a special shofar with vakvasim, vasirim. These are sham nazir and mitzayra that got lost. What happens? You replace it, and then you find the original. What do you do with the original? You're actually starving, send it to kevisna, you take the money, you put it in the pushka. V'amoisaros and leftovers, which the Gemara is going to point out. Everything we just mentioned, really, parim, elim, kvasim, sirim is moisaros, really. V'hama, ma is the cowboy. Another, everybody in Klal Yisrael brings 1 machzas shekel for what? What do we do with the money? We buy the korbanos. This is the tamid sheshachar, tamid shel ben arbayim. Now, a machzas shekel might not be, maybe it's slightly rubbed off, from the usage. So you always add a tiny amount, Shalom Aleichem, welcome, come inside, come. A little tiny amount more, called a kalboin, a little, maybe up to a ma. So you give the machzas shekel plus a tiny coin. Says Rashi, interesting thing, Taisus really doesn't like what Rashi says, but we go with Rashi. Rashi says, and what if partners bring 1 shekel? So, theoretically, a shekel for 2 people, it might be rubbed off the same way a half a shekel is rubbed. So you should bring 1 kalboin for the shekel. But then it comes out that the Beis Hamikdash is losing out its ma. So bring another ma. But that's not really the same as the first ma. The first ma is like part of the machzas shekel. The second ma, you decided that Bezin shouldn't lose out. It's not because it got rubbed out, because you want to bring out. So put that in a special shofar. That shutfas, full shekel, that you really have to bring 1 ma, or kalban. And you bring 2 kalban, so the second kalban, put it in a special shofar. So until now, we're just stopping here before we get to all the pshatim. Oh, Seirim, by the way, I didn't explain. Seirim are the sar of Musaf of Yantev, which comes to be mechaper for Tumas Mikdash Kedash. We had a whole sugi about it. Okay. Kulu Chizkiel Yamri. Chizkiel says the peace. We want Kohanim to be in peace, so each day gets its own shofar. We're not so worried about fighting. Why? Yomi, everybody's busy with his day. Not so worried what happened the day before, who got more leather, less leather. Seder. Just realized, the Gemara says somewhere that at a certain point, the Beis Hamikdash decided not to give the leathers, the hides, to the Kohanim. They weren't behaving or something, so they took it. And they had so much money from it that they were able to plate the entire Beis Hamikdash with like a thick gold plate. So in other words, these hides have value. You can see why people fight over it. I'm not concerned about money going bad. I don't need 6 shofars for that. Kizir Le'amri, he says what? You need the 6 types of animals. There's the par, egel, this picture. Ki chida le'mukmi. That only goes if you hold, like Rebbe, that if you bring a large animal instead of a small animal, you're not yaitza. He says no. That's Rebbe. That's Shitas Rebbe. Can't be that this whole Mishnah goes according to Das Yachid. The top of the Sama, the Kvasim, Seirim, it's all. Moisaris, Kulinam Moisaris. The first 4 things in his list, Parim, Elim, Kvasim, this is all about having leftover. So I don't need a special shayfer for leftovers when all 4 things are leftovers. Kulinam Moisaris. Ma, and then he says, oh, but you need a special shayfer in case there's partners who brought 1 shekel. Ma namil shkol mazla. It's not true that extra kalboin goes into the Maksa Shekel Pushka. The Sanya Lehechem Kalam Zohilach. Where does it go? L'shkol and the Remeir. Zohimel and the Dava. Okay. So you have a machlokes. I'm going to get into a machlokes to Remeir and Rebbe Eliezer. No, it doesn't make sense. Ushmul Omar Nu Pshat. So we dealt with those first pshatim that we had. Now we have 2 that are very, very similar. They're off by 1 thing only. Shmuel Omar Keneged Moiser Chatos. If a person, let's say, designates $100 for his chatos, halavai $100, right? Today, and the guy had a whole website. You could calculate your carbon, how much you owe for carbon if a woman gives birth. Oh, whatever, $500 minimum, right? Keneged Moiser Chatos. So you have left over. You put you thought it cost $500, and you got a good deal. You got one for $350. So that extra $150 goes into this pushka of Moiser Chatos, the same thing Moiser Rosham, Moiser Hasham Nazir, Moiser Hasham Etzoira, Umoisar Minchas Choyte, and the leftover when a Choyte that doesn't have money, he brings a Mincha. And here's the only nafkamina, Umoisar Asiris Ha'efa Shekayin Gadol. The Kohen Gadol every morning, every evening, every morning he brings a holy sorrow and he splits it, divides it in half. So if he has leftover that day, that goes into the pushka. Yeah, I know you asked that question a lot. But Reb Shaya Omar, he wants to know physically how it works with the. So sometimes you bring money and you buy it you purchase from the Beis Hamikdash itself. Reb Shaya Omar, Keneged Moiser Chatos, Moiser Osham, Moiser Hasham Nazir, Moiser Hasham Etzoyer, Moiser Kinim. Over here, he switches the Asira Seif of the Kohen Gadol with the birds. If a person owes birds, he's a Zav, let's say, so he's bringing birds when he becomes tar. The leftover money goes into the pushka of the birds. Okay. These 2, they argue only on 1 point. Is it the leftover for the birds or the leftover for the Kohen Gadol? So how come it doesn't say birds? If you look at the Mishnah says, Kinim, here, I'll even show you here if I can find. Number 3. What's number 3? Kinim. It's in the Mishnah that there's a shayfer for Kinim. Rabbi Shaya, Tani, what he says this Mishnah, Tani Kinim, what he doesn't have number 3 in his list. But Rabbi Shaya, Tani Kinim, we know that Rabbi Shaya says that number 3 in the list, or whatever number it is, one of the 13 shayfros is Kinim. So he says, you're right, but Chad Kinim, Chad Moisar Kinim. There's one for birds, and there's one for the extra that came off the birds. Rabbi Shaya, my time no, so how come he doesn't say that it's for the Kohen Gadol, that's Sir Seif of the Kohen Gadol? He holds that it's supposed to go to waste. You don't put it away. Yirkav. Over here you see a little bit, not like I was telling you. All right, Yirkav. Left over, so maybe sell it. I don't know exactly. To sell that, maybe sell the flour and you take money. You certainly do not put flour in a shofar. I'm asking to you. Oh, so that Sir Seif of the Kohen Gadol, there's nothing you can do with it. It goes to waste. You have to let it spoil. This is Moisar Minchas Nidava, Moisar Mincha Yirkav. My Kamar, what does it mean? Moisar Minchas Nidava, Moisar Mincha Yirkav. Moisar Minchas Choyte Nidava. The leftover of the Minchas Choyte should be a Nidava. Moisar. So you say, if it's Kohen Gadol, Yirkav. There's a difference between the Choyte and the Kohen Gadol. Choyte, just put it in the Pushka. The Kohen Gadol's Isarin, let it go to waste. Rabbi Omar, he argues. He says, no, the leftover of the Kohen Gadol is in a dava. Ela moiser lachmi toida yirkav. The leftover of a lechem toida, if you can't finish all those 40 breads, that goes to waste. But plukta, it's actually machloikis. Moiser asir seifesh Kohen Gadol, Rabbi Yochanan in the dava, Rabbi Lazar in yirkav. Whether or not the asir seif of the Kohen Gadol goes, you have to let it spoil or not. Meisvei. It says, Moisar shkalim chulin. If you have leftover shekel, you put aside a machzah shekel for people in your house, and you have leftover. What do you do with it? It goes out the chulin. It's 100% chulin. And it says, umoisar asir saifa. That's what we're talking about right now. The leftover of the asir saifa. L'chayr, we're talking about that. Which the Gemara is going to say, no, we're not. It's something else. What else could it be? Moisar asir saifa. Seems like we're talking about the kohen gadol's asir saifa, and it says, umoisar kinizavim v'kinizavais. A person who's a zav or a zava, kini yaldais, a woman who gave birth, and it says mefurish, it goes to nedava, you don't let it get wasted. You don't let it rat. And it doesn't rat. That's also an asir seifa, and that's the one that you let go. But to nedava, you could be doichek. You say that's what it's talking about. You don't have a raya, you don't have a concrete raya from here that the kohen gadol's leftover doesn't rat. It seems like the one who says that you let it spoil, the Sadio, because we learned in the pasuk, it says in the pasuk. Maybe it's korban shechata asir soifa. You see, it says mefurish in the pasuk about a minchas chayta that it's asir soifa, and it says v'leitin levayna. That's where Mendy said. What do you mean leitin chayta niskar? Okay. The Sanya, he. At the end it says he. I should have made the he red. Omer Rabbi Yehuda, he kru chatos, and you learn from this. Only this minchas chayta is called a chatos. A lot of the sugi has to do with the word chatos. Menacher is kru chatos, but nothing else is a chatos. In other words, the kohen gadol's mincha, although it's called a chatos, it's not a real chatos. Leave it as here. Say kohen gadol she'en kru chatos tuna levayna. That is not called a chatos. And it does require levayna, and memeilo medeina kru chatos meisara yirkav. So you learn from a pasuk that the leftover of the kohen gadol is spoiled. Says the Mishnah, shor ze oila v'nistayv. I tricked the oilam in Hebrew. I want to see if I can trick you guys. What if a person says, Rabbi said, what if a person says, harei olai oila? Harei olai oila. And something happens to it. Does he have to, so it gets stolen? Does he have to bring another oila? Yes. And if he says harei zu oila, so some of the Israelis didn't get the whole zu thing. They know nedav is zu, but they didn't know harei olai. Like they were confused by the. They knew one part of it. They weren't so good at. Zu. Zu is nedava, a doiv, nedava. Yeah? But the Mishnah doesn't say, the Mishnah says, Harei shar zeh. So what is that in nedava? He points at the axe and says zeh. Zu, zeh, same thing. Oila. So meila, v'nistaiv, and he got a mum. So what's the halacha if he gets a mum? It's not your responsibility. It's not, you said zeh. If something happens to zeh, if he drops dead this ox, you're not chayiv to bring another one. If it has a mum, you're not mechuyev. So memela, if you go ahead and sell it, the money has kedusha. But you can do whatever you want with the money. You hear? You're not locked into this animal. This animal's gone. You sold it and the money has kedusha. Okay, but it has nothing to do with the original. You're not mechuyev to bring the original. So you want to trade it and take with the money and do something else with it. In Ratzi, you bring two instead of one. Shnei shvarim elu oila. You did the same thing. You pointed at these two oxes. These two should be an oila. And the nistav when they fell a mum. If you want, you could instead of two, you could bring one. What's better, 2 or 1? One animal that weighs 1,000 pounds, or 2 animals that weigh 500 pounds. What's better? Huh? You say 1. Anybody with a 2? Anybody say 2? 2. You says 2. Rashi says 2 is always better than 1. Azizat Rashi. Rebbe is always oyser because Rebbe says you got to stick to what you said. Katan v'hevi gadol. If you promise you're going to bring a 10-pounder, and you brought 1,000 pounds, which is 990 pounds more than what you promised. No good according to Rebbe because that is not your neder. Rebbe oyser. Really, Rebbe's only oyser lechatchila. You'll see Rashi. Rashi says the word l'chachila, but the Eved, it's okay. Ayel ze oila, same thing. He said on a ram. This particular one is oil. V'nistayv and it got a mum. Im ratzo yavi b'dom of keves. If you want, now you go from a larger sheep, a mature one, to a baby. Keves ze oila v'nistayv. What if you pointed at a baby and you said, this sheep, and it has a mum? Im ratzo yavi b'dom of you can go large. V'Rebbe Oyser, because Rebbe says what? Cotton legadol is no good. Daf kuf chesam and base. V'o amris reisha. We learned in the Reisha, Shar b'mano, yesterday. Shar b'mano ve'hevi shnayim b'mano. If a guy, he promises he's going to bring one animal worth 100, and he goes and he buys two animals, each one is worth 50. 50 plus 50 equals 100. Lo yatsa. What's the obvious answer to this question, Rabbi Yisai? No. Much better answer. What?
This yatsa. We just read that it's yatsa.
Hold on. V'amris Reisha, Shar b'mano ve'hevi shnayim b'mano lo yatsa. Last minute, not today. We learned yesterday. If a guy promises an animal for 100 and buys two that have the same value, or even two that each one is worth 99, two 99ers are not worth 100. So how come now you say that you could take an animal that's worth 100 and sell it off and buy two? Well, say it better. You have to say much better. Oh. In our case, is a mum, and Memela, he has no achrayus on it anymore. Over there, he promised 100, and nothing happened in between, and he went and he took 250s. 250s doesn't equal 100. Says the Gemara, Shor Zev v'nistayv shani. V'nistayv, it became a balmum. So it became a balmum, you can do whatever you want with the money. Shnei shvar melu, oila v'nistavu. Shnei shvar melu, oila v'nistavu. If a guy points at two, and he says, these should be an oila, two should be an oila, and it befell mum. You can go trade the money from the two, and buy one. Even on that, Rebbe says, also. Why? Why do you say it's also? My time. Because when you go from two to one over here, Rashi says the Yisoid, Rashi dibur hamaskil, gadol ve'vi katan, shebachol makom shnayim chashuvim meyechad. Va'afil shneim shavim. My time mishum the havali gadol ve'hevi katan. Va'avagat in his stoiv. Oh, so hear what's going on here? You take two, you promised two, and you bought one. So it's going from something special, two special, says Rashi, to one. So it's like going from a large thing to a small thing. But lemaisa, I don't understand. It's not your responsibility anymore. It has a mum. You can do whatever you want with it. Rebbe says even such a case, it looks bad. It looks like I'm throwing that in. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's not your achrayus, but it looks like you're going from a large thing to a small thing in the Beis Hamikdash. No good. As the Gemara of the first case, when it's a one to two, you're telling me two animals is better than one. So Rebbe should argue even in the first case. If I go from one, it has a mu.
It says, "Gam ha'emer harezu chalalav choivas hava'a." It's our parshas nedarim. Just do not chayv b'achrayus. It's like you were saying earlier.
You mean earlier?
Some chiyuv towards
some chiyuv. Okay.
This animal.
Okay, something. I don't know what. It's some sort of responsibility if the animal has a mum. He's going back to before. Okay, so in the reverse case, he went from one to two. Two, you're telling me, is great. Only in magnums did this, but in 2 to 1 is great. I'm sorry, 1 to 2. 1 to 2 is a good thing. That's the first case in the Mishnah. 1 to 2. A mum happened to one char and you got 2 shvarim. How come Rebbe doesn't argue there? Says the Gemara, Rebbe does argue there. Rebbe akula milsa palig. So why didn't you hear from him? Because Rebbe has manners. V'notar lu'ula rabbanan, I'm asking l'sayu. V'hodar mafli galayu. He waited patiently until Chacham said everything that they had to say. And then he argued one argument. He said, listen, you cannot change either way, from good to bad, from bad to good. Don't ever change what you said. So let the guy finish. Let him finish the sentence, and then argue with him. It's the first Teda, and now I'll prove to you. Very, very good raya over here. That's not important to us. What's important is this one. Keves. Keves is the cheapest animal you could buy from all the korbanos. It's a baby sheep. That costs how much did you say? $75 you were saying before. How much?
75 to 200.
The baby. Let's call it a 75er. Okay, the least possible, a little tiny one just born. And he points out and he says, this is oil, $75, big, gvir, giving $75 carbon. If it is and then it went bad, it got a mum. He could go buy the expensive one. How much is the expensive one, Eli? 500. He could go get the 500er. Oh, so you see the mefurish a case where you're going from really bad to really good, and Rebbe says no. Even in that case, no. So you see, he does argue in every single case of the Mishnah, even going from one animal to two, which is bad to good, according to Rashi. Two is better, argue, Shema Mina.
That's why he only said at the end.
Yeah.
You wanted to say one thing.
Yeah, he said it all the way at the end. But I'm proving to you that he actually holds this because it says over here, Rebbe Oyser. In this case, he did argue. Iboilu. Memina lamina mai. So this we did discuss a little bit, and it's interesting. Can I replace, my animal has a mum, can I replace a very expensive cow with two medium-priced sheep? I'm going from a different animal. Toshma, shorze oilov and I promise to bring a bull and it has a mum. Lo yavi b'dom of ayil. Don't bring a small little ayil, it's way too small. Ava maybe b'dom of shneilim. You could bring two. Rabbi Yoiser levishein bila. So before we jump into Rebbe, what do Chacham say? It's okay to go from a bull to a ram. You can bring a ram instead of a bull. So that's okay. That answers our question. Two, yeah. I don't care how many. I'm going to, but a different type. Rebbe says it's also why? Because when you bring two rams, you have to bring a mincha per ram. It's two. So now you have two menachos. You promise one mincha, one carbon. Now you bring two. They don't mix. Doesn't go well. Shema mina. Now I have a question for you. What if we actually just said it? But let's think about it. A guy promised a $3,000 cow, and it has a mum. Can he replace it with a $500 sheep? One sheep. That's the question. So that's the Gemara. Hachi, my area tray. Why does he have to replace it with two? Afilu chanami. He should be yoitza yidei chayva with one. Why? You already told me you could bring a small one instead of a large one. And you already told me that you could go from one type of animal to another type of animal. So if you go from a large to a small, from two animals to one, which is large to small, and you could go from a cow to a goat. So bring one goat instead of one cow. What's the difference? You go from large to small. And you can go to a different min. So let's replace one whole cow with one ayil. Why do you need two alim? It's a big kasha. It's a very good kasha. Says Gemara, you told me that there's no difference. You can replace the small one with the large one because anyways it's not your achrayas. And you just established that you can go from one type of animal to another one. So one ayil is instead of one cow. What's the problem? So you're right. You're 100% right. In the Mishnah, the Tana really holds that there's no difference between a large and a small. But over here, he'll hold that it is a problem. Rebbe Yoisel Lefisha in Bila. Time of day in Bila. You tell me the whole reason is because you can't mix two elam. That's why you can't replace two with one cow. Oh, Yesh Bila. Sorry. What if you don't have to mix it? It'll be okay. But what happens if one ram got a mum? If you want, you can bring a smaller sheep. And then what about keves oila? He said on the smallest animal possible, he says this should be an oila. What you could replace a small sheep with a very large sheep. And that's only one mincha, one bila. And what does Rebbe say? Rebbe Oyser. Why does Rebbe say it's aser? It's mashma that if it's equal in terms of the menachos, how many menachos and how many bilos you have to do, it's okay. So why does Rebbe say it's aser? You're right. In the Mishnah he says it's aser. Over here it'll come out that it's mutter. Ubet an animal that doesn't have a mum, egel ve'evi par. If he made a neder to bring something small, a calf, and he instead brought something large, you think it's great. Keves ve'evi ayil, yatza. And that goes stomach rabbanon because Rebbe would hold even in such a case when you go larger, it's aser. Rotza yavi b'dam of shnayim. Omer Menachos zvid over Rav. Lo yishonu alado. Omer shor ze oila. When a person says, I have 0 achrayus, I don't take responsibility. Aval mashar ze olai. You hear what happened there? Over here he said zeh, but olai. It's like a contradiction. This, but upon myself. So which one is it? A neder, how do you say neder? Hare olai oila. How do you say nedava? Hare zu. And what if he mixes the two words? He says one word after the other. Zeh olai. Hukba. You have achrayus, you locked in. Ask the Gemara, who told you? Maybe he meant zu, it should be in a dava, I have 0 achrayus. But I'll bring it, I'll take care of it. Elo, you're right. Even if he says the two lashonis together, no achrayus. Rabbi said the Gemara is masking, no achrayus. If I take a responsibility on the money, then he has a responsibility because he took responsibility on the money, not on the animal. Rabbi Sai, have a wonderful day.
Merit the schus of spreading Torah throughout the world. Sponsor a shir today. MDYsponsor.com or sponsor at MDY.com.